In the book, Breaking the Spell, Religion as a Natural Phenomenon, Daniel Dennett claims he has found the answer as to why an overwhelming majority of humans believe in God. He claims that people have theistic beliefs only because they helped our ancestors survive difficult times. Belief in God may have given people hope and happiness, which lifted their spirits and allowed them to survive. So ancient people invented God, which in turn helped them to survive and pass on their genetic information to us. So according to Dennett, our beliefs in God come from genetic traits that have been passed down from our ancestors to help with survival. However, in promoting this idea, Dennett has said more than he realizes. Towards the end of the God delusion, Richard Dawkins admits that since we are creatures of natural selection, we cannot totally trust our own senses, because evolution is only concerned with preserving traits that help a species survive, and not concerned with preserving traits that tell a species what is actually true about life. So if naturalism is true, and we are products of natural selection, then everything we know is only for survival, and not what is actually real. So what Dennett and Dawkins do not realize is if our beliefs in God are only there to help with survival, and are not true in any way, then how do we know if anything we believe is true? If naturalism is true, then all our beliefs are just traits that help us survive. Timothy Keller says it like this: evolution can only be trusted to give us cognitive faculties that help us live on, not to provide ones that give us an accurate and true picture of the world around us. Now you might be saying, well, wouldn't knowing what is true about the world be the most beneficial for survival? Not necessarily. It has long been argued that mild paranoia is much better for survival than an accurate assessment of your environment. Therefore, if evolution only passes on traits that help with survival, and mild paranoia is better for survival, then it logically follows that if naturalism is true, it is more likely that everything we believe to be true is actually a paranoid delusion, instead of an actual assessment of the environment. This argument has been a big problem for naturalists. The literary editor of the New Republic responds to Dennett by asking, but if reason is a product of natural selection, then how much confidence can we have in a rational argument for natural selection? Patricia Churchland says it like this: the principal chore of brains is to get the body parts where they should be in order that the organism may survive. Improvements in sensory motor control confer an evolutionary advantage. A fancier style representing the world is advantageous so long as it enhances the organism's chance for survival. Truth, whatever that is, takes the hindmost. Even the great Charles Darwin struggled with this truth. He wrote, "With me, the horrid doubt always arises whether the convictions of man's mind, which has been developed from the mind of lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy." If naturalism is true, then everything we believe to be true are actually just beliefs that help with survival, including beliefs about naturalism. In other words, if naturalism is true, the belief in naturalism is just something we believe because it helps with survival, and we have no way of knowing if naturalism is even true. So the belief in naturalism defeats itself, because you can't believe in naturalism and believe it to be true. We also cannot logically trust what we find empirically. The world studied by science is a world we experience through our senses, and in order for us to experience that world, our minds have to process information it gets from the senses. But if naturalism is true, our minds process information in a way that helps us survive, instead of telling us what we are actually sensing. So how can one argue that everything he gets from his five senses is actually true about the world around him? The five senses evolved to help a species survive. So a naturalist can't argue that the information he gets from his senses is telling him anything but information that helps him survive. This is why C.S. Lewis and Alvin Plantinga argue that it is unreasonable to accept naturalism, because when it boils down, if naturalism is true, then what our brains say about science, morality, and logic is nothing more than chemical reactions designed to help us survive and pass on genetic information. However, if the alternative is true, then an intelligent designer has given us minds that tell us what is real and what is true about the world around us. And it also makes logical sense as to why we operate as if our minds are telling us what is logically true. Now, if you're an atheist and watching this, you've probably arrived at this point and said something like, so what? This argument doesn't prove that God exists. It only shows that naturalism can't verify that we can trust our cognitive faculties. But it doesn't prove God exists. And you would be correct in saying this. This argument doesn't give us proof for God's existence. It only gives us evidence that he exists. However, if you operate as if your mind does tell you what is true and does give you an accurate representation of reality, then by definition, you are assuming that naturalism is false, Because if you believe naturalism is true, then you must operate as if your mind is only telling you survival information. Theists don't need to operate in such a matter, because we believe an intelligent designer created us with minds that allow us to experience the world as it truly is. Therefore, we have reason to trust our minds to tell us what reality is, and we know that God's existence is also logically coherent, because our logic shows us logical proofs for his existence, such as the modal ontological argument, which can only be refuted by denying logic itself. In conclusion, if you believe naturalism is true, then you cannot trust what your mind has told you is true. It may very well be that you believe naturalism is true only because your mind tells you, and not because there is any logical coherence of its validity. So you cannot operate as if anything you believe is factual. But if you do believe that your mind is telling you what is true about reality, then you are also saying that naturalism is false, and the alternative is more coherent. As Timothy Keller says, if we can't trust our belief-forming faculties in one area, we should not trust them in any area. If there is no God, we should not trust our cognitive faculties at all.